All right, everyone, welcome to another edition, our second edition now of the Walkoff on a podcasting version. And you might have gotten used to listening to just me and Anthony. It is no longer like that. Now we have Justin Randell with us, who joined us last season, or joined us in first semester a little bit. And now back in the summer, Justin had a class during our time period during second semester, but now fresh from the hockey season, Justin is here. The big Devils fan, and of course, joined by the always amazing Anthony Walsh. Of course, I'm Vincent Picone. Uh, First of all, we've got a big week, guys. How sports in general? I'll go to Justin first. How have we been feeling? I know you're a big Knicks and Rangers fan.
I'm on cloud nine right now. Honestly, I just got done watching the Rangers win 5-3 over the Carolina Hurricanes. They now advance to the Eastern Conference Finals. Um, it almost felt like I was gonna have a heart attack watching the game. Right from the jump, like first and second period, they were just awful, like flat out awful, getting outworked, out hustled. It was just nothing was going right. And they fell behind 3-1 going into the third period, and something changed. And I couldn't imagine the Rangers coming back and winning that game. And just it was just so fun to watch. And I feel like this really could be the year for them. And obviously I know this is a baseball show, but I just want to put it out there to any Ranger fans that are also baseball fans. Like we're feeling great right now. This is a great time to be a Ranger fan. And as you mentioned, talking about basketball with the Knicks, they're playing great as well. They're going for their series clinch tomorrow night against the Pacers. So that's going to be another thing I'm going to be watching tomorrow night. Probably going to have another heart attack watching that as well. But you know what? I'll get through it.
Well, Justin has obviously had a lot of fun watching other sports as his third sport is probably not doing the best, I think we could say, but a good win for them tonight. Anthony, your Mets come out on top in 11 innings, 6-5, the final against the Phillies. Lost the series though, so I'm still happy. But Anthony, how have you been?
I've been doing pretty good. I not sports wise because I'm very disappointed in the Mets. I'm even though the Mets won tonight, I really didn't feel very good about anything that happened whatsoever. We got very lucky that the Phillies didn't win. Phillies almost won about three different times in the game, especially in extra innings. But especially with Edwin Diaz, who looks nothing like he did 2 years ago. And the hitting just isn't there. I was at the game on Tuesday, and he Aaron Nola had no hitter going for what, like 7 innings. So yeah, it's been a rough going with the Mets. I do like that Vientos is back up. Hopefully Alvarez will be back in about a month. Maybe we'll start seeing some of these young kids come up. But just yeah, unlike Justin, I'm not a big basketball or hockey guy, so it's been mostly negative for me, which as per usual.
Yeah, but you want to Jets schedule came out
Yeah,
recently.
true, true.
Uh, I'll say this: I'm an Eagles fan by heart, but I have a soft spot for the Jets just because they've lost so much. And when I got into sports, I was just a Phillies fan, and they were just losing.
Can I,
Um,
can I just point out really quickly the Giants' new uniforms that were released? I think yesterday.
those
They're
look
awful. They're just terrible.
they do look pretty bad. They do look bad. Agreeably, they look bad.
Oh,
Um, but as we look into the baseball season a little bit, I mean, Anthony, you mentioned it a little bit. Edwin Diaz has not been his usual self. I wouldn't say usual self. He didn't have a good 2021 campaign, right?
Well, he was. I'll break it down. It's basically 2019. He was absolutely terrible his first year at the Mets, coming off of being really, really good with the Mariners. 2020, the shortened season was okay. Basically, from 2020 to 2021, he was average, had his bad moments, but was an average reliever, kind of middle of the pack. And then obviously we know what happened in 2022. So I would compare what he's doing right now to 19, because right now he's not average, he's just terrible right now.
I would say he's now blown his last three of four save opportunities, which is crazy because when you to put it in perspective, your reliever is supposed to get three outs usually. And if you're giving up the game tying run in three of those outings, the other day, Phillies, two of those outings were against the Phils. Tonight was the third one. Rough for sure. I'm gonna say that I think he's gonna get back on track. Edwin Diaz, in my eyes, is still a dominant relief pitcher. But coming off of an injury where he didn't pitch for an entire season, I would hope that he still has it in the tank.
And I feel like it might be a little bit easy to say, like, oh, did Edwin Diaz come back a little bit too early from that injury? And, you know, I don't necessarily agree with it. I'm not saying, reporters or fans have said anything like that. But I will say, as you mentioned, he just doesn't look himself in general. It's not even just looking at his motion and his release point. It's more so just his velocity and also just where his pitch location is. In years past, you would just see him pounding the strike zone with that fastball. I mean, he hits 100 very consistently, and right now it's just you see a lot of movement all over the place. He'll throw it really high, really low, inside. He just hasn't been himself, and it really tells you the story of how the Mets season has gone so far. I mean, they're now, what is it, 20-23, high expectation. No, actually, I'll take it back. Not really high expectations, but good enough expectations to at least be competing for a playoff spot. And right now, just things are not going their way, starting from, hitting wise to the starting pitchers not doing well. And now, arguably a top five closer in Major League Baseball is not doing his part as well.
Yeah, and I think one of the things they said during the broadcast today was Jake Diekman came in and they said his last outing he had like 3 walks. He's averaging a walk per outing. So, I mean, the bullpen for the Mets has not been the most beautiful thing in the world, and especially next series, and correct me if I'm wrong, next series against the Braves, right?
In the Marlins.
Marlins,
And
yes.
Yeah,
Marlins is next or the Braves?
Marlins.
It's Marlins.
Oh, well, um, you would hope for a couple wins there, but when the Braves come up, that is something that you don't want to see.
I'll say this. I mean, you guys, I can see why maybe from. I know you're a Met fan, Justin. I'm not saying you're not a Met fan, but you've been more focused on the Knicks and Rangers. I got that out of the way.
Yeah.
I can see from like an outside perspective that the bullpen's been like bad, but it really hasn't been that bad when you take away Diaz, which is obviously huge. So if you want to just go for Diaz, yeah, it's been bad. But the rest of the bullpen's been pretty solid actually. Jorge Lopez, Ottavino, um, even Diekman for the most part. I mean, he has had a lot of bad walks recently. It's been pretty solid. And the pitching in general, the starting rotation, Severino, Minaya, Jose Budo has actually been pretty solid, even though he's gotten off to a rough start to some of his games. The problem's been with the hitting. And yes, Edwin Diaz too. And when you have Jeff McNeil hitting 230 or whatever he's hitting, when you have Francisco Lindor hitting under 200, it doesn't matter how good your rotation or your bullpen might be, you're not going to win. But yeah, as for Diaz, like I'm just worried that he's not healthy, honestly, because his fastball is not even hitting 100 anymore. He's barely even touching 99. So the constant sliders just make me worry that something's going on there. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I just want to be fair. Like it hasn't been terrible with the bullpen and the rotation. Not that it's been great, it hasn't been terrible, but it's been the hitting that's been killing.
Yeah, I agree. And you see that has been the best for the Mets, but we've seen some bad situations around the league, kind of moving away from the Mets and looking at across the nation onto the West Coast. I would say compared to the Angels, the Mets have been doing a good job of just saying, listen, we are not that good, and we kind of know that. We are still putting our A for effort out there. Ron Washington, on the other hand, who has been in baseball for 40 plus years now, kind of came out the other day and said that his players, at least Luis Guillermo, did not do his job well, and it is not Ron Washington's fault. In fact, it is Luis Guillermo's fault, and that's why they lost the game. So big situation, tying run on third, 1 out. Yeah, 1 out. And Guillermo is put up there for a sack bunt situation, sacrifice bunt. What?
Yorme, by the way. Yorme.
Guillorme. Luis Guillorme. So Luis Guillorme goes up to the plate, and I'll say this. What, Guillorme's lefty?
Yes.
Yeah. Who's facing a lefty? And the lefty did the smart thing and just threw a slider outside and he went poking for it because he knew that Zach Neto at third was coming home no matter what, and he could not get to it whatsoever. They tagged Neto out, and they tagged the runner from second going to third out. Uh, very disappointing. Angels lose that game against the Cardinals, and Ron Washington after basically said, "Was not my fault. He didn't execute. That's why we lose the game."
Well, here's my problem around Washington. I not that I sat there and was watching that game. Obviously, I was not. I don't think any of us were sitting there watching Angels Cardinals. But I did do my research on it, and because I want to be fair when I bash a manager, and I'm gonna bash Ron Washington here because he claimed during that inning that the pitcher had no problem with the strike zone, was throwing strikes, or at the very least, when it was asked about, well, were you worried about calling the suicide squeaks, considering the guy was walking everybody? No, he should go up there and bunt the ball. They don't make excuses with this and that. The guy had walked two batters right before Guillorme. And he was all over the place. So if you're going to call a suicide squeeze, you have to be pretty confident that the ball's at least going to be in some sort of position where the hitter could get a bat on ball. And the pitch was a foot and a half outside of the strike zone. I get it. Guillorme is not there for his hitting. He's there for his glove, and he's there for those situations where you got to make the small ball play and bunt and everything. I respect that. And you could even say, listen, he should have threw the bat at the ball, anything to get the bat in the ball. It was only one strike. A foul ball wouldn't have been the worst thing that could have happened. But the ball's a foot outside of the plate. It's very, very hard, especially lefty on lefty. And the approach that Ron Washington took, especially in 2024, is going to get him fired eventually if he keeps it up. Just plain and simple. You can't go after the players like that anymore. It's not 1980. The players hold the power now. I don't care that it's Luis Guillorme and not Mike Trout. This is still a major league player earning millions of dollars. He's going to win at the end of the day. So I don't know. I really just think even if it was Guillorme's fault, which I don't think it was, you don't put full blame on your player. You take some blame too. It was his call at the end of the day. You're the manager. The buck stops with you. And that's just basically my 2 cents on it. Usually I like that kind of old school, go after the player mentality if the player's wrong. This wasn't one of those cases.
Yeah, I pulled it up now that we're talking about Ron Washington, but I just want to read the actual quote that Washington said for those at home that didn't get to watch the post game conference or parts of the game as well. But exactly what Washington said was lefty on lefty and with a sinker baller on a left-hander. I didn't want him to hit into a double play. He can handle the bat. He didn't do the job. It wasn't anything I did wrong. He didn't do the job. And that's just very harsh words from your manager, especially in your first season being the manager for an Angels team that is in a rebuilding stage. Whether you're in a good situation with your record and team wise or not, that's still something you as you guys mentioned, you don't want to hear that from your manager to a player. But also, especially since Gourmet just got to the team as well. I mean, he was just released by the Braves, got picked up by the Angels, and now you're coming in here and you're already getting criticized for one, teeny tiny mistake out of 162 baseball games, and you're getting pressed by your manager. I mean, come on. I just think Washington did not handle it the right way. And also, Guillorme came out and said during his post game that he didn't even hear Washington's comments after the game until the reporter asked him about it. So from that point on, that's just also not a good sign that Washington didn't take it up with Guillorme face to face, and that Guillorme has to find out firsthand from a reporter. I just think it's a messed up situation to be in.
I would say this. I totally understand a coach going up to a player behind closed doors and saying, you did not do the job. You need to get better at this, or you're not going to be on the team. Like, you're the reason we lost the game, basically. Saying it to the media is a different thing. It's not a good look for anybody. I remember in the playoffs, he didn't even say it to media, but when Orlando Arcia said "Attaboy Harper," like, it got everywhere, and it makes Arcia look like this villain that he's really not. The media takes things, and I mean, we're all communications majors here. We know how it works. The media takes things, and then people fly with it, and they go up to their own perceptions. The media makes up their own perceptions. So for Guillorme, this has to stink because going up his next at bat, something's going to happen, or he's going to be like watched extra carefully. And for Washington, your career is kind of being closed in on right now. That's not how you're supposed to approach the situation. You're supposed to be professional about it. The amount of times that I've seen the Phillies lose because a player made a stupid mistake and the manager will go up there and say, no, 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 no. We put him in a bad situation. And whether or not that's true, that's what you're supposed to say. It's kind of like the answer that you need to say because it needs to be said that way. You can't go out and just bash any team, especially your own team. It doesn't work like that. I don't know. And Justin, you mentioned it. The Angels are a team that are rebuilding. You can't go insulting players when you're trying to rebuild. Let's just be honest here. The only player, I would say, the only player that's guaranteed to be there by the end of this rebuild is probably Mike Trout, and it's only because he's in that huge contract.
Yep, fair point. And the Angels aren't going to want to keep a manager that's volatile, and players might not want to come there because of him. I mean, it's early on. This could be forgotten if they go on a little bit of a run and they finish the season around 500 and there's good feelings. Maybe it will be, maybe it won't, and it's still totally tailspin. It could go either direction, but yeah, it's just not something. I mean, the only way I ever could say I agree with a manager going after a player publicly is if they don't hustle. That's the only me personally. But and especially in a situation like this, like it's not like Yorme didn't go out there and try his best to execute the play. He's not some great player. Like just leave it be. I don't know. I really think this is a move that he made that he was kind of stuck in the past. Like this would have been a thing that was in the paper, the Los Angeles paper for a couple of days, and it would have been gone. Nowadays on social media, this lives forever. Like guys have long memories. This will not be forgotten, and it's a dumpster fire in LA right now.
And you also mentioned it as well, Anthony. Like you're talking about, oh, this isn't the '90s anymore with Washington managing. We're in 2024 now. Things changed. Players they take different approaches when it comes to being, or at the plate rather, but also in the context of media as well. Media back in the '90s, obviously we weren't around for that time period, but it was just more a little like nonchalant talking, with the players and media and all that stuff. Nowadays, if you say the wrong thing, to a media member or about a player to the media, it can get taken, out of proportion. And that can lead to an escalation of things as well. And fortunately, that wasn't the case here between Washington and Gourmet, but we've seen it in the past where things have gotten, taken out of context when it comes to a player and a manager. And, it wasn't a good situation to be in. And also, as you said, if Washington keeps this up and he tries to manage like he did in the '90s in a completely different era of baseball, it's not going to get him anywhere. It's not going to get the Angels anywhere for that matter. And, at this rate, I'd be shocked if he even lasts the entire season being the manager. It's just it's a very weird situation to be in. As if things haven't gotten worse for the Angels as of late with their record and all that. It just gets even worse when there's a situation like this on their hands.
Yeah, I agree with you, Justin, on that one. It's an awkward situation. The Angels, in their own right, are in an awkward situation, and you got to keep an eye on that sometimes. But kind of moving things along because there's so much news to talk about in baseball this week. Uh, First of all, quick little break for some trade breakdowns throughout the league. Angels are acquiring Ronnie Contreras from the Pirates, one of their pitchers, and uh, Brandon Bilek is going to Oakland um, for some cash considerations from Houston. Now, another kind of weird thing I would say, because I'm not the biggest fan of his baseball calls, but he is coming back apparently. So, and for fans that listen to baseball or any sport, Joe Buck is planning on coming back for his reunion, but also his final game uh, with Chip Carey, who does Cardinals games. They're going to do a Carey Buck reunion for Bally Sports Midwest to get the Cubs and Cardinals rivalry one last time. one last time. Now, I don't know what you guys think. I I'm okay with Joe Buck. I think some people hate him more than I do, but there is some times where it's like, all right, I think I've had enough of you.
I'll say, I mean, I don't blame Joe Buck necessarily for having a bias towards the Cardinals. I understand it. His father, Jack Buck, grew up being not grew up, but he was the announcer for the Cardinals, and Joe grew up being around the Cardinals organization every single day. His father was a legend there, so I get it. It was frustrating, I will say, as a little kid whenever the Cardinals would play the Mets and Buck would be on the game for Fox, and like every 2 seconds he'd be praising St. Louis. So I didn't really get it back then. I kind of get it more now. I prefer him much more with football, honestly. I don't know how you guys feel about it.
Yeah.
I think he's much better on a big Monday Night Football game than he is with baseball. But that could just be me. I mean, he's been out of the baseball game for a while now. I mean, what, like 4 or 5 years? Um, Joe Davis has been the MLB on Fox guy. So yeah, I mean, I'm fine. I mean, it's cool. I mean, anytime you could be honored by your team that you were with for a long time and a city that loves you and loves his family, that's cool for them. I mean, I have nothing against them for it. But I'm more of a football Joe Buck guy than a baseball Joe Buck guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it on the nail there, Anthony. Again, I don't know Joe Buck for his calls with the Cardinals and him being around baseball. As you mentioned, I know him more for being a football guy and calling the big time games. And I'll flat out say it. I'm not a big fan of Joe Buck when it comes to football because the way I'm going to talk right now is talking as if I'm watching him call a football game because again, I don't watch him for baseball, but it just seems when he calls games, he's not enthusiastic. I mean, there have been big time plays throughout a football game that occur, and he'll just say it very nonchalantly, and just try to pick it up from there and have like the color commentator be more enthusiastic. I mean, Joe Buck when he calls football, he's with Troy Aikman, and it seems as though Troy Aikman is more invested into the play rather than the guy that's actually calling it, which would be Buck. And that's just been a case like in recent memory when I've watched him where it's just I feel like he could do a little bit of a better job when he calls games because that's what fans want to hear. When there's big time plays going on, especially if it's a playoff game, you want to hear that enthusiasm. You want to get on your feet and cheer and just get like feel the energy, like feel as though you're at the game. And I just don't think Joe Buck delivers it in that fashion. But I mean, you guys know more about his calls within baseball more than I do. So I mean, if you continue with your thoughts on that, but I just wanted to put it out there that I'm just not a big fan of when he calls football games.
I'll say this. From like, and Justin, you can relate to this too. For announcing games, I mean, we do it on the D3 level, but sometimes you do have people that like one's enthusiastic and one's kind of, you know, just there to read the script and get the plays done. Um, and that works sometimes. Uh, I'll I'll say I remember his baseball calls, but not that well. Um, and you see the highlights sometimes. Sometimes he's very calm about it when it's like a go-ahead home run in the bottom of the eighth. So I can understand why people don't like Joe Buck, but his career it has lived up to the moments. I think this will be a good send off for him. Cubs, Cardinals, put it out there. But I mean, now taking off Anthony's point, you do get somebody that's a little bit biased. But I think if he's working with somebody that's another Cardinals fan, it'll sound good. And if you don't want to listen to it, just turn on the Cubs broadcast because I guarantee the Cubs broadcast is not as biased. It's like when I watch the Mets and Phillies games, I like to put on the Phillies broadcast because I don't like to listen to no offense. I don't like to listen
Oh,
to Keith Hernandez talk for 3 hours about how the Mets are better than the Phillies when it's like 8-2 and the Phillies are winning. And I'm like, I don't know what does that even mean, Keith? Or I do like when Keith like he'll tell a story, but he is the kind of him and Kruk do this a lot. John Kruk is for the Phillies. Keith Hernandez does it for the Mets. They'll have like Brandon Marshall hit a huge double and Kruk will still be talking about his story throughout the double. Pete
I-
Alonso was a huge home run, or maybe not a huge home run, but a home run nonetheless. And Keith will still tell a story about him in the 80s. So I think that's just the character that you get, and that you don't get that for every broadcast. What Clyde Drexel does it for the Knicks.
Clyde Frazier, you mean?
Clyde Frazier.
Not Clyde Frazier.
Who am I thinking of? Clyde
Clyde Drexel.
Drexel. I'm very tired, as you can see. But I think bringing flavor, bringing, experiences to the broadcast is always a lot more fun than just having that kind of Joe Buck enthusiasm where it's just like, and that's a deep drive to left and the Dodgers take the lead and that's it. And it's like, that's not really fun. That's not what sports are. But nonetheless, congratulations to Joe Buck for potentially his final game. Should be a lot of fun to watch. Although I guarantee we won't watch it because the Mets will be on or the Phillies will be on. And I'll turn that on.
Rangers might be on too.
The Angels could be on, and we could be just watching Ron Washington.
There you go.
Or the Rangers could be on for Justin and the Knicks. Now I don't want to say that I kind of where'd Anthony go?
I'm here. I don't know why my camera does that now. Anyway, go ahead.
No, you're totally fine. Now I don't want to say that I'm a genius because you already know that. But I said last week, don't count out the Astros yet. Do not count out the Astros yet because they are going on an easy schedule. They're going to be fine because they're the Astros and that's what they do. And in their last 10 games, they're 7-3. And folks, they're on a 5-game winning streak and have taken the last 2 series, one from Detroit and one from Oakland. They just swept out Oakland.
Yeah, last week I remember even saying to you, like, if there's ever going to be a moment where they're going to get back on pace, it's going to be over the stretch, and they have. So, I mean, I don't know if I'm totally convinced that this is going to be, we're going to look back at this and say, oh, this is when the Astros got hot, and now they're back right in it. I'm not going to go that far yet, but I mean, this is a good stepping stone. I will say that. Like, this is if they were to lose a series against the Tigers and the A's, I probably would be saying that they're done. So it's not fair for me to be like totally like in the middle and say, oh, it doesn't mean anything. It means something, but I'm not going to go as far as to say like, oh, the Astros are now they're back to what I thought they were in March, which was a potential World Series team. I still don't think that. I mean, I don't want to say they've disappointed me. I'm not an Astros fan. I really could care less what they do, to be honest with you. But my expectations were totally gone past. I didn't think in a million years that they would right now still be behind the Athletics almost in mid-May. I would have told you were crazy if you were to say that. So I'm not going to go as far as to say this is a season-changing moment, but it was definitely important to win these games.
And
I'll say this.
There you go.
Tomorrow's series is going to be huge. If you want to really dial in on a team that needs a make or break series, tomorrow is it for the Astros because they're going to want to go up against the Brewers, who is an actual competition. And if you're coming out of a 5-game winning streak, I would say you need to win this series. This isn't a series that like you just take one game. If you got swept, my hopes and dreams are gone for the Astros. If they win this series, I'll stay alive for a little bit longer. But Anthony just said it. Let's be honest here. As much of I like watching the Tigers, but we all know that they're still a little bit below average, which is a little bit shocking to me. And the A's, as much fun as they've been this year, they're still below average. And when you're going to face a team that needs to be above average for you to show that you're an actual competitor, tomorrow is the series against the Brewers. Sorry, Justin, I cut you off.
No, you're good. But I mean, just on the topic of talking about the Astros, I mean, there's been a lot of ups for them as of late, but there's also been a lot of downs. But I'll start with the ups. Talk about it before with the Astros. Alex Bregman. I mean, he was just awful to start the season. Like, just nothing was going right for him. He was batting under 200 at one point. Came up in a lot of situations with runners on. Did not deliver that hit to give him an RBI or just anything to help out the team. But as of late, he's been on fire. The other night, I think he had what was it, a 2 home run game, I believe. I forget what night it was. I think he had a 2 home run game, and then I think 2 nights ago, or maybe it was last night, I think he had another home run. Uh, to add to his list. But he's really picked it up big time. He's also helped me out fantasy wise as well. I've needed his support because right now I'm trying to fight to stay in like the top half of the standings. So shout out to Bregman for starting to step it up. But now looking at the downside, the other day I forget if it was either yesterday or the day before, but Randell Blanco was on the mound, right? And he was pitching a good game, and all of a sudden he gets checked out in his glove, right? That's a whole new thing now. Again with the MLB, making sure to check the gloves of the pitchers after every inning and all that. And the umpires they found something on his glove, and so what do? They eject him from the game from that point on. But again, he was pitching well up to that point. And now with that new rule, it's automatically a 10-game suspension uh, for Blanco. And that's just not something you want to see again in the game of baseball. You've seen it in the past. You always remember looking back at last season with Max Scherzer when he did it against the Dodgers, right? So you think back to those situations and how it really affects the team. And with a team like the Astros who are still in the bottom half right now, trying to work their way back up, one of your better pitchers now is out for 10 games, for foreign substance on his glove. So that's just something, you really don't want to see. Because right now the Astros, they're feeling good about themselves. They're thinking like, oh, this is not what we typically do. We're a playoff caliber team, and now we're starting to show that we are, a playoff team. And now with one of your pitchers going down, it's kind of like the momentum just shifts away. But we'll just have to see, how the Astros really respond without Blanco for those 10 games.
And you bring up a great story point, Justin. Blanco, who is a guy that threw a no-hitter in his first start this season, was looking really good. And in a team that at the start of the season was facing a lot of injuries in their starting rotation, he looked like to be a bright point. And I remember telling a couple of my friends, I'm pretty sure I didn't say it on the show, just watch out because last year Michael Lorenzen threw a no-hitter and then he was awful after. He just couldn't hold it. And kind of looking back on that, Blanco was able to hold it. But a lot of people have come up and they've said their concerns, and they've kind of said that, okay, he definitely was cheating then. Umpires said that this is the stickiest stuff they've ever seen. So I think Scherzer's thing is 1 point because that was sweat and sunblock, right?
Well, he claimed it was rosin.
Oh
Like
yeah,
it
which
was
is the
only
bag
rosin.
behind the mound.
Right.
So I mean, I don't think Scherzer was cheating. I do have a little bit of a mindset that Blanco was cheating, but quite honestly, we'll never know. Anthony.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I'm just a very cynical person, so I tend to think like, okay, this means that the whole reason he was good is because of foreign substance. We have no way of knowing that. Obviously, we can only go by what the umpire said, which was obviously very bad, what you just brought up. But yeah, there especially lately, there's been a lot of, like you said, kind of the hangover from getting a no hitter. A lot of these guys, like, they come, they get the no hitter, and all of a sudden you just don't hear the name again. And Ronel Blanco is like really I guess the poster boy for that because he came out of nowhere. Like me and you have never, any of us here, Justin included, I'm sure, have never heard of Ronel Blanco anywhere near before that no hitter. I'm sure the day before we hadn't heard of him. So the fact that he came out of nowhere then, proceeded to pitch a solid rest of the season, and then now get off to a really good start to this season, like it could happen. A guy could bloom late in his late 20s, early 30s, and be a really solid pitcher, but it's very, very rare. And like I'll be less interested to see how they're going to react to the next 10 games because that's missing 2 starts. More interested to see when he comes back, is he going to be anywhere near what he's been these past couple seasons? I don't know. If he gets off to a really bad start, I'm sure everybody will be blaming the sticky stuff. It's going to take time to see. I'm also going to be concerned. I'm not concerned, but well, I guess a little bit concerned to see if maybe there's injury concerns that pop up because as we've seen when they started cracking down on the sticky stuff, guys all of a sudden their arms will start hurting them. It's a big crutch, when that's helping you with your off speed and even your fastball. It helps your arm. There's less torque on your arm, and so now if he's without that and he's got to throw a curveball, or slider or whatever without any sticky stuff, there's a lot more torque on that arm. So we'll see. I don't know. I'm not predicting anything, but if they don't have him being what he is, it's really a huge blow because we've said like that rotation leaves a lot to be desired. I know Verlander's been better as of late, but still the age is a concern. Valdez hasn't been as good as we thought he was going to be. Blanco really held the fort, and now he's not going to be here for a while, and we don't know how he's going to be when he comes back. It's going to be interesting to see.
I agree entirely. The Astros have a lot of stories going on. They've had stories going on for the past couple of years, but this is one to be looking at. If you're not gonna watch the Astros in the next 10 days, watch Blanco's next start. It should be interesting. And Anthony, you're right. I mean, it's not just okay, was he cheating? It's also is he gonna be okay? Because when you're relying on this stuff, your arm's gonna hurt a little bit when you're not relying on it as much. And we're coming close to the end of our show now, but still had a couple questions for you guys. Paul Skeens had his first start. He's gonna have his second start tomorrow. Started off really good stuff, and ended probably not the best. Threw 16 straight balls towards the end. Definitely shows that he needs to work on the control a little bit, but he was looking pretty good. Nico Horner hit a home run off of him, and he had 7 strikeouts through, I believe, 4 innings.
Yeah, Justin, you can take this.
Oh no, I mean as you were talking about that, I was trying to pull up his actual numbers from that game. That was actually a crazy game as well because I think there was a rain delay uh
Yeah.
Yeah.
during the game as well. But yeah, I'm looking at it right now. So the final score was the Pirates won 10-9 over the Cubs. But I remember watching it because I was actually at work at the time. I don't for you guys that don't know. I mean, I work at a liquor store right around the corner from my house. So
Wow.
it's well, it's it's a very easy job where I could just pull up the game and watch a few innings when it's slow at work. But I had the opportunity to watch part of it, and the first inning he did very well. I think he had 2 strikeouts out of the 3 outs that he recorded in the first. But in the second inning, it was a little bit of a struggle. I think he got out of a bases loaded jam. I think it was yeah, bases loaded and 2 outs, and I think he might have been a ground out or something. But he seemed dialed in early on. Got off to a fast start, especially in front of the home crowd as well. It was a packed house there. Um, but yeah, his upside is ridiculous. I mean, the guy just consistently throws 102, 103 miles per hour. I mean, you just don't see it that often where a guy like him could just throw it like pitch after pitch after pitch, hitting that number. But his upside is ridiculous. Obviously, when you look at the line in general, wasn't the best line. 4 innings, 6 hits, 3 runs, 2 walks, and 7 strikeouts. But again, it's only his first start, first overall pick in the drafts. High expectations. But I love what I saw from him. He's going to be an excellent pitcher in this league for a long period of time, and he's part of that rebuild for the Pirates. And it starts with him, being able to come out every 5th day and deliver a strong start and try to get a win for this Pirates team. But I'm excited to see what the future holds for him, and yeah, that's all I really got to say.
You mentioned it with the fastball, and that like obviously the results are important, but for the first start, especially, like I'm less concerned with what the actual line was because guys are nervous. I mean, how many times have we seen Hall of Fame pitchers go out there and throw a dud in the first start and nobody even remembers it. So I just it was this stuff there, and yes, it was. You mentioned, like I said, you mentioned the fastball over 100. It looked as advertised. Like you could say as much as you want about the minor league numbers. Oh, guy's so great, throwing 102 in Double A, Triple A, whatever. It doesn't mean anything until you actually see it in the big leagues. and we saw a glimpse of it. And yeah, he was roughed up, and yeah, he had some control issues, but that stuff could all be fixed very quickly with a good pitching coach and some good pitchers around them, some good veterans. And I really see this guy. I'm not going to go as far as say rookie of the year or anything because he got a late start, and that's a lot of pressure to put on a guy. But I really do see him living up to his expectations. He was one of the top prospects in baseball, let alone the Pirates. The stuff is there. Honestly, the only concern I'd have was the injury risk, the 100-mile-an-hour fastball on the shoulder, on the arm, and everything. But he's got youth on his side so far. So honestly, as long as he's not injured, I think he's going to be their ace for maybe, I don't know, 5-6 years. And if like the thing with like velocity, it's tough for me to say it's going to be 10 to 15 because the guys that throw 100 miles an hour, very rarely do you see them last like over a decade with that type of stuff. So I'll say like 6-7 years being the Pirates ace.
Yeah, and he's gonna have another chance against the Cubs tomorrow. This time in Wrigley. I really like this stuff, and I'm gonna go off what Justin said, and basically, he is. Let's be honest here. He is the hopefully, he is the player that is gonna bring the Pirates back to relevancy. They had Brian Reynolds. Brian Reynolds was great. Brian Reynolds did not bring them back into, the NL Central entirely. Mitch Keller. Mitch Keller has been a good pitcher, I'd say, for the Pirates, and he can't really bring them back into this NL Central race. I think they need a little bit more hitting on their side, but O'Neal Cruz, Paul Skeens, two guys that can really bring this team back into, what it used to be. I'm not saying it's going to happen this year. I'm not even going to say it's going to happen next year, but they need to make a big free agency move. They need to trade for something. I would hope that this is the Pirates' move to start being good again, because it has been too long since we've seen the Pirates been good. Last time we saw the Pirates good, McCutchen was in his glory days. Now he is just there for, publicity, sadly. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. And Anthony said, injury concerns, but he's got age on his side. It's entirely true. He kind of has the Taylor Swift effect with him as well. Livy Dunn coming to all the games should bring a little bit more attention to the Pirates. I know they would love it. The Chiefs did not need it, but I guarantee that they still love it. And the Pirates, they probably need it. Now, as we come to the end of our show, for the walk-off this week. First of all, our home run chart, which Justin will now be joining. Cannot wait for you to get into the race. I've scored 1 week. Besides that, I can't do anything. Very embarrassing.
So what is this home run chart about? Explain it to me.
Of course. So, for any of our new listeners and for Justin, our home run chart, you pick a home run hitter, it cannot be in the top 5 home run hitters, and you pick them to hit a home run. Now, Justin, I'll be honest with you, you're coming at a little bit of a disadvantage because you can't choose anyone that's already been chosen. So I'm going to give you a chance to go look at the home run list and go figure out someone that you like. It can, of course, be a Met. But for last week, I picked Max Muncy. He didn't do anything. Anthony picked JT Realmuto, who didn't do anything. And Luke and Tom never got back to me, so they had nada, nothing, 0.
So if I look at the home run leaders right now, I can't pick any of those guys.
In the top
I will
5.
tell you who you cannot pick. Are you ready? You
Okay.
cannot pick Tucker, Gunnar Henderson, Josh Naylor, Shohei Ohtani, or Marcell Ozuna. Now, I picked Ozuna, but Ozuna was not in the top 5 at that point.
But once you choose somebody outside of those top 5, do you have to choose someone else for good, or can you go back to that same
Just this
person?
week. 1 week, can they hit a home run?
Okay.
It's harder than you think. And I'm saying this because we have done 6 weeks so far, and I have hit once. Do you know what that means? I'm hitting 167 in the majors right now. This is embarrassing. All right. I'm still better than Jackson Holiday, but it's still pretty bad. Um,
And I
so
shared
Anthony,
the sheet with you, Justin. You can't pick anybody that we've selected either.
So I want to pull
Me,
this.
me and Vincent will talk for a while. We'll give you a chance to look up your. We should have probably told you about this before the show, but that's okay.
yeah, that's my bad. That's
No, it's
my bad.
hard. Me and Vincent both are bad, but don't worry, we'll give you some time. But
Wait, so
you want to give your picks first, Vincent, or want me to go?
you go first, Anthony. You usually pick the ones that have the hits, and then I don't pick anything good.
Well, I haven't been a Hall of Famer either. I will say, all right. I went with a Philly last week and it burned me. I'm gonna go back to the well and pick another Philly. I'm going to because the
Wow.
Phillies absolutely killed the Mets these past few games. They're the hottest team in baseball in terms of their wins, most wins in baseball. I'm gonna go with Kyle Schwarber. Gonna go with
Wow.
Kyle Schwarber. Yeah,
Okay.
he's surprisingly like he's not anywhere near the top five. He's known as a home run guy. It's pretty much the reason why he's with the Phillies.
That is true.
So I gotta go with Kyle Schwarber, man. I mean, when I look through this and another key part, by the way, Justin, as you're listening, keep track of what you're only picking the home runs for this week. So like if this ends at Thursday on 10 o'clock, say if we record the next episode. So look at whoever that team's playing for this next week. If they're playing a lot of bad teams, probably be a good pick, which leads me into explaining my Schwarber pick because Phillies playing the Nationals on starting on tomorrow through Sunday.
Yep.
Then the Rangers, good team through Thursday, but some hittable pitching there. So I'm thinking he's gonna get a couple with maybe against the Nationals, maybe one against the Rangers, and then I'll win the week if things go well. I will say I am rooting against myself because I never am going to root for a Philly. I never will. But if it happens to work out for me, I won't be totally upset.
All
So,
right, that's a great answer.
out of all the people that are available, like, you can't repeat picking the same person for
Can't
another
repeat
week.
anybody.
Yeah, like you
Any of
can't
those
pick.
names on there, you can't.
Yeah.
Like I can't pick Yelich because Tom already chose him for a week.
That's right.
Bingo. Yep.
Okay, so that has to be someone completely different. Okay, well, I thought of my guy, and since it's my first one doing it, and me being a Mets fan, I'm looking at the list, but nobody chose Pete Alonso.
All right.
So
Okay.
Pete
That's
Alonso
fair.
was not on the top.
I'm gonna put Pete Alonso down for my pick of the week.
Oh, I got it. So I'm picking someone who I've been watching very closely lately. Because just like Justin, I have a fantasy team and I have to make sure that they're doing good. So my guy to watch this week, I just said his name briefly. Going up against a rival team next. Uh, I'm sticking with somebody who doesn't have a lot of home runs, but he's been really interesting to watch lately. I'm going with O'Neal Cruz. In his last 7 games, he's got 2 home runs. Let's just put it this way. Some people want to go for the gold. Anthony is that kind of person. Justin's looking to get on the board. I'm just looking to stay out of another goose egg. All right. Easter's coming up, and I have all the eggs right now in my list. Really quickly, for any of our big fans, these have been my hitters so far. Jordan week 1, 0. Harper week 2, 0. Both of those guys, Harper hit like he had a 3 home run game the week after I picked him. Amazing. Ozuna, 2. All right, so that makes up for lost time. Then I picked Colton Cowser. Nothing. Mookie Betts. Nothing. Max Muncy. Nothing. And now it's time for O'Neal Cruz. Either hit something or don't. And if he doesn't hit anything, I'm picking Mets for until it's done. And I hope I finish with 2. We'll see how it works.
Don't take that bad energy on our lineup. We don't need that bad energy. You got to stay away. This is bad enough.
Remember, whoever wins in the end will get the opportunity to have 5 minutes to brag about their team or slander their team entirely. So it's either listening to the Mets talk or it's listening to a Phillies fan talk about how he loves his team so much. But again, as we come to the end of our show, had a great time with you guys. Once again, we always love having Justin. Justin, good luck to your Rangers. Good luck to your Knicks. They're the only teams in the playoffs right now. Anthony, I'm giving you good juju for the Jets coming up.
Thank you. Thank you.
6 primetime games. That should be fun to watch.
Please, that Achilles has to stay intact. Please.
That's what my friend, Luke Sirianni, who's been on the show before, I texted him once the schedule came out, or me and Tom were texting him, and he goes, as long as we're not playing at MetLife for the opener, I do not care.
And as long as he could just last one series, I think he'll be okay.
I want to watch Aaron Rodgers as a Jet. I'll say that. But again, thank you all for coming. We'll see you next week on the Walk Off. Make sure to watch some baseball.